Hello, guys. This is Shivali, brand evangelist here at Helium 10, and we are back with a Tacos Tuesday episode. You guys are in for a treat. I know you have plenty of advertising questions, and we have a special guest expert here to answer those questions for you. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring on Matthew, who is here with us to answer your questions. How's it going?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks so much for jumping in. I know we previously had Jocelyn on, but she's feeling a little bit under the weather, and so
Yeah.
you really stepped in really last minute, and I think that's so awesome of you. I know people have plenty of questions to throw your way. So before we really jump into those questions, I want to talk a little bit about you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background, what you do here at PackView, and your, I guess, history with advertising?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm Matt Fitzmaurice. Nice to meet everybody. I initially started in traditional advertising at a local agency in Baltimore where I live. Very focused on kind of account management there, had exposure to social campaigns and kind of the traditional out of home. It was interesting. And then I kind of found my way into e-commerce and kind of felt it to be more relatable, honestly, just like being on Amazon so much and just kind of interacting with different brands and products on what I felt like was a deeper level. So that's kind of how I got my start in ecom. I've been in ecom in general, I guess, for probably 4 years now, specifically managing mostly PPC campaigns, kind of at the enterprise level, in some form of an agency to client relationship. It's been the majority of it, and then have loved my time at PackView. Leveraging the tech has been fantastic. I think it is absolutely best in the industry. Helium 10 has been a fantastic add-on as well. So it's been awesome. It's been great.
Amazing. Yeah. I know advertising is really the bread and butter for so many brands and businesses. And so being able to understand that or have a really good pulse on it is so important. So I know because there's so much that goes into the advertising metrics and monitoring that, what would you say are some underlying factors that really affect PPC that you want to keep a pulse on?
Yeah, I think goal setting is huge. I think understanding what you're trying to achieve allows you to set the framework really appropriately for any campaign, for any platform, for any retailer. So I think for me, it really comes down to understanding the end goal, and I think contextualizing what those KPIs are tracking towards is also really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, guys, this is a live AMA. So I see we have plenty of people that are jumping in from different places around the world. We have John from the UK. Thanks so much for tuning in. We have Robert from sunny LA. We have Moldova in the house. And we also have some It's Cloudy from Canada. It's Cloudy is a separate comment, but nonetheless, it's really great to see you guys here. And it is a live AMA. So make sure that you drop your questions in the chat section so we really are able to get to them and Matt here can answer them. Now, we already have one filing in. We have Christy asking, hi, I have a product and sell to retail, but worry that the Amazon fees will be too expensive. Is it too late to be successful on Amazon? So I would say no, but I want to hear your side of things as well.
Yeah, no, totally agree. I don't think it's ever too late. I think obviously understanding what those fees are associated with. I know there's a lot that goes into it, and fees can get out of hand quickly with Amazon based on packaging, shipping, kind of the list goes on and on. But I would say do as much research as you can. Try to understand what those thresholds are and what your capacity is. And I would say obviously once you're in Amazon and kind of in the network, the upside is large. So I would say not too late and definitely give it a try.
Yeah, I would definitely agree there. I think it just depends on if you know where to look. And there's certainly plenty of opportunity there. Amazon's growing year over year. So, all right. Well, in other news of PPC, so we said it depends on the goals, right? Going back to that conversation. And you're looking at keywords. So, how would you say you kind of tackle keyword research for, I guess, a new seller as well as for somebody that you're auditing an account for?
Yeah. Um, I think there's a lot of ways you can go about it. I think the way that I always start is kind of in the mind of a shopper. How do I look for the product? What are the things that I'm typing into the search bar to say, hey, how do I find this? I think Amazon is being used more and more like a Google or a Bing or not that many people use Bing probably, but probably more like a Google, right?
SEO,
Where
yeah.
people can search and interact with products and do some almost preliminary research just on Amazon without having to go to Google. So I think try to stay in the mind of a shopper kind of as you're getting going. And then from there, Helium 10 has some fantastic tools. Magnet is something that I use frequently, looking at search volume, looking at competitor ASINs that are on similar terms, things like that, to kind of get a feel for the category. Any add-on that you can kind of have from the Helium 10 tool, even in the search bar within Amazon, gives you, related terms based on search volume. If you're in Seller Central, there's SFR, things like that. So I would say use those tools as much as possible, but try to stay in the mind of a shopper and experiment. You can run auto campaigns and run different reports to generate what kind of new keywords are being pulled. So I mean, the list goes on and on, but to start, I would always say think like a consumer.
Okay, now we have quite a few questions that have filed in since I asked you that one. So let's go ahead and answer some of these. I see I have a shipment landing a few weeks after anticipated sellout. Do I sell all the stock down to zero and then close? Or do I leave a few in returns? And second part, I was Amazon's choice. What happens when I return? Do I start all over? So guys, we are doing the AMA question specifically on advertising and PPC. So let's make sure that we're asking all those PPC questions. But even on that note, let's say that you want to rank for a specific keyword and you're ranking at the bottom of a page, right? And you want to get back up to the top. How would you really go about changing maybe the campaign that you're looking at? Like, for example, when is a good time to negative match a keyword?
Yeah, it depends how specific you want to get with your actual campaign, but negative targeting can be really helpful if you want to be very, very laser focused. I personally am a huge fan of exact match keywording. For me, I feel like I have the most control over it. I know exactly where my ad's going to place if obviously you win the auction, but for me, I definitely will default to the exact match. And then from there, I think understanding what my budget limitation is, leveraging things like day parting and trying to get the most out of every dollar. So that way my ad is serving as efficiently as possible on the right times of the day to kind of get that engagement and then drive up organic rank.
Okay, all right. And we have Daniel asking, what would be the effective strategy to boost our organic sales for our product? Currently, 60% of their sales come from PPC sales, and they want to get their organic sales to improve more than their PPC sales.
Gotcha. Yeah, so this is a common problem. Amazon and a bunch of other marketplaces are becoming increasingly more kind of pay to play, if you will, where the majority of the sales are going to come from those top 4 sponsored placements, which makes it competitive, can make it very expensive, and driving that organic sales share up is really important. And I think really some of the things that I've done that have been helpful is kind of, adjusting some of the more, quote unquote, retail-esque metrics, making sure your page is retail ready, having content developed that is bulletproof, is as good as you can possibly make it. And then kind of coupling that with that PPC strategy of making sure that your bids are targeted to exactly where you want them to be. If you're casting a really large net, it's difficult to gain that relevancy. So I'd say be prescriptive where you want to be. And then from there, just track how you're progressing up the page. And then, always, I would say always test. So test things like day parting schedules, test things like different bid multipliers to see what it takes to get up the page. And then from there, I would just kind of keep iterating and keep making little tweaks and trying to refine that as much as possible.
Definitely, I think split testing is a large part of it, and then refining that based off what you're
Yeah,
learning.
absolutely.
What metrics are you really looking at when you're considering day parting and doing all the split testing?
Yeah, I think it, again, kind of depends on the goal, but if the goal is just strictly for organic sales, what I'm looking at is kind of cost. I want to see what those CPCs are. I want to see kind of what the relevance of and kind of try to determine what the right to win is for my product in those particular campaigns and the particular auctions. So looking at CPCs, looking at impressions, looking at clicks, click-through rate, things like that, just to kind of see what that level of engagement is mostly.
Okay, and I see we have another fantastic question from Joy that says, "I'd like to know in which case I'd like to lower the daily budget, and in which case I should lower the bid. I want to understand the difference in situations when to lower the daily budget and when to lower the bid."
Sure. Yeah, I think a lot of times they go hand in hand. I think if there are strict budget restraints that are preventing you from spending to X amount, or if the budget is cut, or you need to pull money from one bucket and put it into another, the budget transition would be the most concrete. I think what happens when you start decreasing bids within a campaign is those bids out over a certain period of time will kind of almost naturalize, if that makes sense, where you can have a campaign budget be, this is extreme, but say $15,000. And many of the keywords within one campaign can have lower bids, higher bids, but kind of have room to kind of breathe and almost live and go up and down day to day. I think if there's one-off cases where it's like we need to pause ads, we need to get this off, the listings as quickly as possible, reduce budget, reduce bids, and then that'll pretty much suppress from an advertising standpoint how visible that is. And then I think in terms of when to increase, kind of on the opposite, if you're finding efficiencies and kind of finding where that keyword sweet spot is and what time of the day in particular you have the strongest right to win, and when CPCs are reduced a little bit, that can be a really good strategy to kind of minimize the overall cost and make sure that you're getting the most for each click.
And when you're talking about, every keyword has different bids. So how do you really determine how many keywords you're putting into a campaign structure? Let's say you're looking at a new account or even an old account. Where would you like to see a cap for certain keywords or ASINs?
Yeah, I've done a lot of testing around this. Actually, I've gone as low as 2 keywords a campaign, 1 keyword as high as 50. So um, I think it depends. I think when you increase the amount of keywords that are in a campaign, you obviously run the risk of people clicking on them and then the cost going up. So I think there's a bunch of different ways to break that out, where you can have kind of a priority campaign with your priority keywords that might be 5 to 15 of your keywords that you definitely want to be advertising on, that are really important to driving your business. From there, you can kind of have a secondary bucket where it's kind of the nice to have. So you can kind of keep the bids a bit lower. Don't necessarily need to win those placements to be driving the bulk of your sales. And then you can kind of have the expansion type of campaign where there might be more keywords where you're just testing to see the validity, which can maybe move up to the next bucket and then up to the priority bucket if they tend to do well. So just depends on kind of, I think, what you're trying to accomplish with each campaign or your overall strategy. But I found that to be really helpful in kind of understanding those top priority terms. I think between 5 and 15 keywords has been the sweet spot for me.
Yeah, I think pretty much the same, even for my campaigns. All right. We have when the ACoS of a targeting keyword in a sponsored product campaign is high, how can I determine when to lower the bid or turn off the keyword entirely?
Yeah, good question. And this is something where it's going to be somewhat category dependent. There's some categories that are just wildly competitive, like vitamins, supplements, things like that. Just one that comes to mind. Some of them are naturally going to be high. This is where I would kind of weigh out what that difference is, or kind of what your threshold is. And what I mean by that is basically if your sales are still growing, if your business is still growing, and there's a couple keywords that may not be the most efficient, that's kind of the risk reward of like, how far do we push? Are the sales new to brand sales? Are you gaining incremental sales? I know incrementals one of those buzzwords, but it is really important when you're considering, do I lower a bid? If it's a really high search volume term and you're getting new eyeballs to your page, it might be okay to kind of let that run a little bit below the overall goal. But from there, ensuring that the rest of your campaigns are built out for efficiency and making sure that you're getting those sales and conversions where people are relatively determined to get your brand is going to be equally important in keeping the portfolio ACoS where you want it to be. So I think use it as a guardrail. I don't think it's going to be the end all be all. I think it's an important part of the overall strategy that you're deploying. But if it's driving your business in the right direction, a little bit of a high ACoS is something that could be tolerable. But if it simply is just tanking that campaign and is not driving the sales, then I would say that's probably when to pause.
I think tolerable is a good word for it, because it does come down to risk tolerance as well as where you are in your seller's journey. I mean, if you're a little bit in the beginning, right, you're going to potentially have higher ACoS because you're still trying to get the clicks and the conversions, and you
Yeah.
don't necessarily have the social proof there.
Yeah, with new products too, it's tough to break into that kind of relevance threshold and work your way up the page. And yeah, for new products, it's definitely it's a fine line, but I think just keep testing and keep reducing bids, keep increasing, keep trying to kind of remake how that campaign is structured.
Definitely. Travis here asks, how do you usually find a balanced approach to setting bids for keywords? Is there a happy medium for higher bids that get more exposure versus lower bids that provide a high return on your spend?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes into the conversation we just had. So a good example for some of the campaigns that I have, I break them out by category and branded and competitor and auto, all single ASIN, all exact match, just is how I tend to run it. So I think it gives a very, very accurate read of what's happening with each bid. For some of my products that I would say are the big business drivers, I have a much higher tolerance to say, I can live with these bids being higher for this particular product, this particular ASIN. And within that campaign, there's kind of its own little ecosystem of these three keywords within this campaign drive 80% of my sales for this campaign. Those three, I'm okay if the ACoS or ROAS is a little bit down from where I want it to be. In terms of some of those lower flighted ones, some of the longer tail keywords where it's not necessarily the core of the product or the highest SFR ones, those ones I'm okay with letting the bid be a bit reduced. And those are going to be more of those efficiency finders where people maybe putting in something that isn't, the first kind of, snap ready, come to mind term for the particular product. So I tend to skew a little bit higher on the bids for the product or for the keywords that I know are driving the bulk of the sales.
Okay, we have Bradley asking, not Bradley Sutton, Bradley Kempfer. Our organic sales have dropped. Besides decreasing spend, how do we improve tacos?
Yeah, I think this one's an interesting one. I think I would evaluate what is actually happening in terms of the current campaigns that you have live beyond just organic. What's happening with your overall, paid strategy as well. I think that's an important one. If has competition changed, I would try to get a really good feel for what's happening on site, and then from there, try to find those little pockets where you do have the strongest right to win and play there and continue to build there. That's where I think you're going to have the easiest time kind of rebuilding some of that organic volume that seems like it's dropped off a bit. So I would say try to narrow down where you're looking. I know looking at it at an entire category and portfolio level is certainly overwhelming. I would just say try to focus in on some of the core areas that have had the most change and see if you can kind of rebuild from there.
Thanks for answering that question. The next question is there any disadvantage if the daily budget is too low? And is there a recommended minimum daily budget you suggest?
Yeah, major disadvantage is that your ad won't serve, which is, kind of it's a balance though, right? Like when your budgets are too high and you have that budget to meet kind of if it's monthly, quarterly, annually, however you're breaking it out. If you're looking at a daily budget, I think it's important to be live during the peak periods during the day when people are on site, when the eyeballs are there, when the traffic is there. That is when it's most important to capture that. And if your budget is too low and you exhaust the budget by 9 a.m., we're going to miss a ton of sales, which obviously isn't what we want. I think in terms of a recommended minimum daily budget, it's probably going to rely on what your overall ads budget is based on the parameters that you're setting. So things that can help kind of stretch out that budget is day parting. I think that's a really, really important one where you're not wasting your full budget by the time people are starting to wake up and kind of shop and kind of have that experience. So reducing your budgets or your bids, to even like 5% from midnight till 7 or 8 a.m. and then have it kind of flighted to go from that 5% to 10% to 100% for the peak shopping hours and then kind of tapering it back down. I think if you can stretch that daily budget out to have just more traffic visit your ad, I think that's going to be kind of that sweet spot.
Great advice. We have a question on how to increase market share further. They run sponsored and sponsored brand ads, product and brand ads. We use 80-20 rule. So is there something you can share on that?
Yeah. In terms of overall market share, I think it's important to understand how many campaigns that you actually are running. So the 80-20 split, I think, is very, very fair. It makes a lot of sense. I think sponsored product is going to be the core, obviously, of the business driving placements. So definitely would skew heavier towards that. In terms of the overall market share, I would also take a look at what your competition is doing. Where are they winning? Kind of where aren't you winning? I think there's a lot that can kind of go into some of that exact match keyword. I'm not sure how your keywords are set up, but if it's phrase or broad, it may not be as focused as you want. And I think also when you're talking market share, you can go all the way down to the keyword level and get super specific where if you're looking at, say, 3 keywords that drive the majority of your business, those are the ones I would really focus on kind of increasing and even reshifting the overall budget to kind of have, that bigger chunk to those really important business driving keywords. I think that might be a good way to kind of also reshape the way we look at market share a little bit. But I would just try to capture, again, the most amount of sponsored product placements on the most important keywords that you have available. And just the consistency is going to be absolutely critical for that. I know budgets can change, things change, business happens. So the more consistent you can be with that strategy, I think it will start to increase over time.
So you mentioned the most important keywords. On the alternative side of that, there's obviously keywords that aren't doing so hot. So Fernando asked, when do you think it's enough to pause a target keyword when there's no sales happening, no PPC orders? How many clicks is enough?
Yeah, clicks is a tough one to kind of measure. A lot of it depends on, I would say, search volume. If it's a really low search volume term, you probably won't see the clicks or the sales kind of as a bit of a result. If it's something that has historically been like a top performer, and it's changed, I would say that's kind of maybe warranting a test of, let's pause it, let's try something else, let's try a different keyword or a group of keywords. Um, I think sales for me is always kind of the North Star, and kind of the rest of those KPIs that we look at around them are good guardrails to understand how the overall business is achieving that sales goal. So I think if sales are very, very low, I think it's probably safe to say that that's okay to pause. Um, but again, if it's something that's been tried and true in your strategy, I would try to rework it. Maybe even if it's as the exact match, try phrase match, try some PAT targeting on similar products on those keywords and see if there's any life left in it. But I think if clicks are low, like below 30 to 40 a month, I think that's probably a good time to reevaluate what the bids are and kind of just take a deeper look at what that keyword's actually doing.
Okay. Emmanuel asks, for new brands with low ad budgets, 200 daily, what are the campaign structures?
Yeah, I think, again, kind of going back to the goals, I would set some goals for yourself. So I would first look at your branded terms and say, like, are we placing here? Are people conquesting us? Are our competitors trying to take our share? I would put very, very low budgets, like for $200 a day, maybe like a $10 budget for some branded campaigns. That way you don't miss out on people looking for your product. It's kind of one of those sales where if they know what they want to buy and they're looking for it but they can't find it, it's a total missed opportunity and kind of the lowest hanging fruit that Amazon has to offer from an advertising standpoint. And then from there, I think if your goal is to grow as much as possible, then I would look more towards category keywords. It's going to be more expensive, so that 200 won't go quite as far. So here's where I would be pretty specific in what I'm targeting. I would probably pick 2 to 3 keywords and say these are going to be the ones that we're going to run with. I'd probably have the majority of the budget set to that. So probably close to $100 to $150 of that 200 towards a category campaign with exact match on probably 5 terms that you deem as the ones you want to be pursuing. And then the remainder of that, I think we'd have probably another 50-ish, $40-ish left over. I would run some auto campaigns and just have it kind of in the background, build some relevancy, and it'll kind of find the placements that will be most efficient. And you can keep those bids pretty low and try to squeeze out some sales that way as well.
You are absolutely killing the questions. So I want to interject here with a question of my own before I continue
Sure.
with the questions that are being asked. So what sort of level would you say a seller needs to be to consider PackView as an advertising solution?
I mean, the tool itself, I think, can be beneficial for any budget. I've managed budgets that are in the hundreds of dollars a day as well on the app and or on the tool, and it's been seamless. I think there's a lot of data that it provides you that um, is incredibly painful to find in the actual UI, and it's clunky, it's difficult. The way that PackView has it organized is very customizable. It's very streamlined, and you can really find the answers you're looking for and really customize those pages to basically be driving to your key business goals, which it's effective. And I think it's been a total treat, honestly, to be able to work with it every day. I've really enjoyed it. So I can't speak highly enough about it, but I think regardless of what your budget is and what your goals are, I think this tool would be a benefit for sure.
Okay, and with that, Michael asks, can you elaborate a few of the most looked at report for sponsored product, sponsored brand, and sponsored display?
Yeah, I would say for a lot of the stuff that I'm looking at, I'm probably pulling the raw data and looking for how I want to twist it in terms of what I leverage in the actual PackView tool. A lot of the kind of the home dash screens of kind of giving that initial read of what's happening are helpful, but what I always find helpful is just kind of for sponsored product and sponsored brand specifically, kind of breaking out by by product group or by brand or however your business is situated, looking at it by brand, kind of the big metrics like spend, sales, CPC, ROAS, conversion rate. I love to see that kind of at the sponsored product and sponsored brand level. I also love going through targeting type. So pulling targeting type with branded, category, auto, conquesting, PAT, and kind of evaluating that way as well, and layering the two on top of each other then it is incredibly helpful to get a read of what's happening kind of at that 10,000 foot view, more or less, depending on the time frame you're looking at. But I think that's a good place to start. And then from there, kind of whittling down, going into the actual campaigns and pulling data that way. For sponsored display, I've always used it as kind of a nice to have. It's typically a little bit lower performing, but I think what it offers is the reach. And I think from that side of it, looking at clicks, impressions, click-through rate, that's typically what I would be pulling to analyze the sponsored display campaigns I run.
Okay. Sherry asks, with the Helium 10 atomic function, how can I see, Helium 10 atomic tool, how can I see visually when I change a bit to know if the impressions are picking up over time? So you can go into atomic, go to the analytics page or the ad manager, and then go to your campaign and target, put in a date range to whenever you made the bid change, and then check out your daily impressions, and then change the date to afterwards and check that as well. You can also go into Keyword Tracker and check out how your sponsored rank has changed as well. Okay. Then we have Christy with a new product, $30. What budget would you expect daily to get sales?
If the ASP is $30, it probably is going to depend largely on what your ads budget is. I'm not sure if I'm fully understanding. If the ads budget is $30, it sounds like the ASP is $30, but it's going to depend. If it's depends on what category you're playing, it depends on what keywords you're playing on. There's a whole host of factors that are going to kind of play into that. But I think it can ramp. If anything, can ramp with a well thought out strategy. So not 100% sure how to answer that directly.
Category is definitely a really important part of that. Every category is so significantly different. If you're looking at garlic presses compared to vitamin C oils, compared to something that has less competition.
Oh, it looks like she said product cost and in gourmet food. Good. Yeah, I mean, I think if it's relative to what else is out there, it depends. If it's price competitive, then you might have a huge leg up on what else is in the marketplace, which is awesome. If that's the case, I would expect sales to ramp up a bit quicker. But yeah, from there, I think, it's going to largely depend on your ads budget, and within the gourmet food, there's a little experience in some of the more appliance of gourmet food, but the CPCs are going to impact a lot of kind of your overall ad strategy and kind of how much you're able to drive through advertised versus organic. So it will ramp.
Zena says placement adjustment in the campaigns. Would that help with boosting up sales?
I'm assuming this means the bid multipliers, which I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
But bid multipliers in general can have a huge help to your overall visibility. I've gone as high as a 200, 300% bid multiplier in campaigns in categories that are incredibly competitive. It was simply the only way that we were going to be able to get ourselves at the top of the page, which it is difficult, but I think using those multipliers strategically on your top keywords, on your top campaigns, is absolutely worth at minimum a test. I'm a huge proponent of testing and learning and not being afraid to make mistakes when it's in pursuit of growth. And I think it takes a couple of weeks to kind of flush that out, but being able to understand that and kind of have that information behind you and being able to use that in similar campaign structures, I think is invaluable. So I would say definitely test it on your most important keywords where you're willing to kind of spend a little bit more than just the bare minimum CPC. But I've had great success with bid multipliers.
Iliad's question, what type of sponsored display campaigns work well with brand tailored promotions or cart abandoners?
Yeah, I don't use it a ton for sponsored display in the ads portal. It's typically not where I'd go, but DSP is a little bit more where I would look for cart abandoners. I'm not a DSP expert, but I would say that's where I would go to kind of get more specific. In terms of the actual ads display campaigns, I've kept them very, very simple, and I find that the more simple they are, the better they run. Um, so that's kind of where I would say just kind of look for, those particular audiences and just keep it simple, keep it straightforward, um, and just constantly keep checking back to make sure that it's not going above or below your threshold too much. I know sponsored display has the ability to really spend.
This is not a question, but Daniel says, "Thanks for your valuable answer. We'll try it
Of
out."
course,
It's
happy to be
always
here.
interesting. Okay, next question. What PPC strategy do you recommend for a newly launched product in a competitive niche?
Yeah, for this one, I would definitely say pick the keywords that matter most to you. Focusing on those, I would say test out the CPCs, see what you're actually kind of going up against. From there, PAT targeting is incredibly helpful if it's a brand new category. It's a definite cheaper rate for basically the way that I describe PATs generally is kind of the nice to have, but it can be very, very strategic. Um, Pick the number one product in the category, pick the highest organic rank, and put a PAT on those particular ASINs and go where the eyeballs are going, and you'll get it at a cheaper rate. You'll be on their PDP kind of at the bottom in that carousel ad, which is going to be lower volume in general. However, it's going to be a really, really good way to kind of have that brand recognition. I'm not sure how consumable the product is, or if it's something that is, like a subscribe and save option, or kind of like a replenishment is high. But if your brand is being put next to those top performing brands in the category, um, it's at minimum when you are serving on those sponsored product placements, there's going to be that recognition, which is going to be critical. So I would say try to establish yourself on some competitor PDPs through product attribute targeting campaigns. From there, also, if you have a variety of products you're advertising, sponsored brand campaigns can be really beneficial because you get to show 3 products for one campaign, more or less, or one placement. CPCs can be a little touch and go there as well, but I would say start there. Kind of leverage your auto campaigns as well. Try to build relevancy. Continue to run the keyword reports from those auto campaigns. See what's winning, and keep your pulse on search volume, and just go after a couple of keywords hard for a while. And I think that should help kind of build up whatever niche you're in.
Adam's question is, in terms of testing new strategies like day parting, do you suggest we start a new campaign or just make tweaks to existing ones?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of keeping existing. I think that the algorithm is going to reward campaigns that have been live longer, and there's going to be more data behind the campaign. You're going to have just more context to pull from. So I would say keep your existing campaigns and just continue to iterate off of that if it's day parting in particular. If you're looking to expand into further testing, then I'd say probably would warrant a new campaign. But for day parting in particular, stick with what has the most data, because then when you go to compare what your changes are, you'll have a much larger sample set to say, did this work versus what we had before? And I think that's where I would go with it, just in terms of the evaluation part.
Just what asks, if I have 2 products which have common competitor ASINs and common keywords, should I run them in the same campaign or different campaigns entirely?
If your goal is share of voice, I would say different campaigns, because that way you can control the bid specifically a little bit easier, as I found. If you have them in the same campaign, though, it shouldn't have that much of an effect. Again, I'm just a huge fan of single ace and single campaign. You get to have super prescriptive control over all of them, and then you can start deploying even some more refined strategy when you're in those 4 sponsored product placements, where you may want one product at the second slot one day and then the third slot the next day. And I've always found that managing that with 2 different campaigns is a little bit easier, and just tracking them totally separately, I've also found to be a benefit when analyzing all that data.
Danica's question is, I am very new to Amazon PPC. We launched our products in November of last year. Congrats. And was managed by an agent until now. I set up a display ad as an audience's targeting campaign for a new child ASIN. My strategy was targeting to my key customers in lifestyle, age, family, but not really looked at my category yet. The spend went through the roof, but with no sales for 2 days. What is your view on display ad with audiences? Was 2 days too short to give any results?
Um, I think display is a tough one to crack when you're looking at what's offered in the Amazon Ads portal. I think it's great at driving impressions. It can have its place, but I think if I were to recommend kind of an order of operations for your campaign structure, your first dollar, in my opinion, should always go to sponsored product, then sponsored brand, then sponsored display. And sponsored brand video is looped into that sponsored brand kind of band, if you will. But I'm not entirely surprised that the sponsored display spend went through the roof. It can drive a ton of traffic, and the click volume can be high. I would say if you're looking to kind of build in those particular audiences, keep a tight budget on it. Kind of have a limit to what you're willing to spend, and then from there, I would try to build based on different targeting strategies through search, whether it be keywords, product attribute targeting, things like that, to kind of build a bit more of an efficient way to kind of get to your overall goal. Which 2 days is a short test, but I think with a ad type like sponsored display, I think 2 days probably is going to give you a good indication of what you're looking to get into for the next pretty much indefinite period of time.
Our next question is from Ramiz. In certain keywords, I have an unnatural click-through rate, 30 to 40% from time to time. It's probably competitors attacking my ads. How do I face this issue? Obviously, Amazon pays some of that back, but the sales are gone. Do you recommend any software that I can use to spot or block these click attacks?
It's a good one. I think this is also going to be it's going to be as a side effect of placing on high search volume terms, which isn't ideal. And I understand the sentiment here. It is something that is really frustrating as competitors are checking to see what keywords are where and clicking into PDPs, and could be undecided shoppers clicking into PDPs. I would say, kind of similar to the day parting, make sure that you have your budget set in a way that you're spending at the times that you want to be spending, and try to limit that so that way there's no major kind of overflow of spend that are on off hours and things like that. In terms of a software to kind of block any click attacks, I haven't personally seen any software that's done that. But I would say try to be as conscious of it as possible. And if it's a really high search volume term, it's going to be part and parcel to kind of what that risk reward is with having your terms on something that's really frequently searched.
If I want to reduce wasted spend on broad campaigns because there's a lot of wasted spend on single click keywords, should I start making exact campaigns to harvest my profitable keywords, or should I keep them both running and see what performs better? My main concern is that if I shut off my broad campaigns, my exact campaigns are not going to perform as well.
Yeah, really good question. Mentioned it a couple times. I'm a huge fan of exact match keyword campaigns. I think you have complete control over everything in terms of what's in your campaigns, what your bids are. So I am a huge proponent of it. I think, again, at minimum, it's worth a test. I think broad serves a purpose. I think it can generate keywords. It can kind of help you at least get the product visible. Whether or not it's always a one-to-one is a little bit tough to kind of determine, but I would say look through your broad keywords and what's being pulled in. Some of them are very, very far off what you want to be. So I would say pull back on spend as you've kind of developed your PDPs and your content and kind of your relevancy on some of those keywords. I would pull back from that broad and move more into the exact. And from a performance standpoint, I would expect it to perform well, because you are targeting exactly where the sales are coming from at a very prescriptive level. So you then would have complete control over how much money you're funneling to that and kind of how aggressive you want to be. So I think it's definitely worth a test at minimum.
Kirst asks, should you use the suggested bid?
It's a great question, and there's really no way to know. I mean, I would say test it. I've used suggested bids. I've kind of gone just above them, just below them, right in the middle of them. I can't say definitively whether one worked better or not. I think if you look at, I would say use it as another kind of guardrail. Use it as a directional piece of information. If your bid's $20 and the suggested bid is $2 and your CPCs are $2.50 or $3 and your ROAS is pretty low, I would say skew more towards the lower side. But in terms of a couple dollar variance, I haven't noticed anything too substantial in terms of a performance drop off or increase. But I think, worth a test again. Like, again, run your suggested bids for 2 weeks and see what happens, and compare it to the previous 2 weeks, and then from there go a little bit above for 2 weeks, then a little bit below for 2 weeks. And I think every business is going to be different, and the way that it operates is different, and the keywords you're playing on are different, and the strategy. So it's absolutely worth the test at minimum.
Certainly depends. I know for some of my products, I've try this adjusted bid, and I don't actually need to be using this adjusted bid. I'll go on the lower end. I'll go lower than the lower end, and it'll
Yeah.
still work. So
Yeah.
really just split test that, guys. Hello, Gonzalo. We have how many clicks on a keyword target without sales before closing it, lowering bids, or dismissing it?
Yeah, I would say evaluate what keyword it is. If it's a long tail, low search volume term, then I think, probably pretty safe to keep the bids either very, very, very low or pause. If it's a really high priority term for you, I would say stick at it for as long as you can kind of tolerate the cost and see if there's a way to kind of break through and become more efficient if the auction dynamic changes at all. But I think a lot of it's going to come down to kind of how high that search volume is on the term. But I would say if it's driving sales and your desired ROAS or ACOS your ROAS is like $3 and you're at a 215 or 220, I think it's worth pursuing it. Again, I'd say sales is kind of the North Star here. So I would say before pausing anything, evaluate kind of what it's doing for your business and then move forward from there.
Do you have any recommendations for Amazon offsite advertising to increase offsite traffic to our listing?
Not in a PPC standpoint. I mean, there's obviously nothing we can do from a PPC standpoint to increase offsite. I think DSP would be, the recommendation in terms of kind of how to build audiences and kind of move offsite and driving people back. This is absolutely not my, area of expertise, but I've heard affiliate marketing is an option. I don't know what products you're running or kind of what your business looks like, but I have heard that links from affiliate marketing has driven a ton of volume back to Amazon. So that could be an option, but yeah, not quite my area of expertise.
Ramiz says, I sometimes try out niche keywords with low search term and exact match, but I get 0 impressions no matter the bid. Does bidding too high for a low search term keyword harm the campaign?
If no one clicks on it, no. I think if the term is super low in search volume, I would expect it to be low anyway. And with Amazon being a second price auction, it won't hurt you too much overall. I think it's, if anything, worth a test to see if you jack it up, the bid up, does it get a click? Does it show? I would also, walk the aisles or do store walks frequently and see if you're in those advertised placements. Depending on whatever you're bidding, I would just see if you fall out of one, if you don't fall out of one. And Amazon being Amazon is also, the ability to reduce the amount of sponsored placement spots on keywords given search volume and things like that. So there may be no sponsored placements on those particular keywords as well. So I would double check on site what you're seeing and kind of try to evaluate from there. But usually I would say niche keywords are going to be on the lower volume side anyway.
Eric has a question that says, for a well-known brand with large global media spend, but brand new to Amazon, how would you structure all Amazon campaigns to maximize performance on a $5,000 per day ad spend for 5 products?
Yeah, certainly starting with sponsored product placements. And I would say breaking into the category terms is going to be absolutely critical if it's a well-known brand. That brand recognition piece, which is very difficult to build, is kind of already, that box is checked. So I think that's a huge benefit. And then just really trying to find those areas where your shoppers are looking for you is going to be really, really important. So I would skew pretty heavily towards sponsored product category campaigns, probably again, exact match. And I would have for your 5 products, 5 separate campaigns for those. And then I would also layer in some branded campaigns. I think this kind of goes back to, I know we chatted about it earlier, but if someone searches for your brand and they don't see you, that is an immediate miss sale and obviously not a great shopping experience. So I would say have some branded campaigns as well to layer on. And depending on what that overall cost is going to be between those 2 ad types, definitely, work in the auto campaigns, keep those low. And then depending on how much you have left over and if you have creative assets, sponsored brands are going to be huge with just, again, kind of putting those products on display, giving your brand a little bit more of a real feel for people shopping. I know it's difficult to kind of attain that on Amazon a lot of the times, but lifestyle imaging, sponsored brand videos is something you can leverage as well. And I've done a ton of testing with the AI generative media creative within Amazon. And I would say if you don't have creative, try the AI tool. It's really, really interesting. I could go on for hours about it, but it's a really, really good way to kind of get some sort of creative live for sponsored brands. So I would say to recap that, Definitely sponsored product category campaigns one, followed by some smaller budget branded campaigns with auto campaigns, and then expand to sponsored brand if you have the budget for it.
RG's question is, how do you handle products like decor that don't convert highly on any particular keyword because customers like to click around?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I think this is a lot of right place at the right time. So I would say making sure that you have the right mix of everything and not pouring everything into those sponsored product campaigns, which is typically not, I'd say, the norm, but making sure that you're visible where people are searching. So auto campaigns are going to be really important. PAT campaigns are going to be really important. Um, for home decor in particular, there's a lot of times, things that go well with other things, and kind of starting that thought process for the consumer is going to be really important. With, again, product attribute targeting campaigns is the best way that I can think to do that. So I would start there and try to just, again, be at the right place at the right time, make sure you're visible during those peak hours, and leverage your day parting and that more granular strategy to try to focus in on when those sales are being driven.
Maynard's question is, have you seen ACOS success with the BOGO percentage off advertising strategies?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, to be honest. All of the discounting and strategies of all the promo strategies, I'll just kind of wrap it up that way, is very, very subject to change. I think time of year is huge. Your category is huge. I mean, if you're in like a back to school time frame and you're a back to school product, it might be fantastic. But the categories and products that I've been working with, I haven't noticed any major ACOS shifts with any promo that I can think of.
Okay. Santosh's question is, I'm currently offering high quality skincare soap products. What type of campaigns would be the most effective for promoting these products?
That is a competitive space. It is very, very competitive. So I would say auto campaigns are going to be helpful in keeping CPCs down. PAT campaigns, again, CPCs will be down, and you'll be able to gain some of that recognition. I think if you're trying to really highlight the quality of the skincare soap, there's really few ways better to do it than a sponsored brand video. Kind of giving the consumer a 15-second to maybe 25-second clip of, this is what the product is, this is what it's doing. That's going to be the best way to get that recognition of the quality. It's very, very difficult to capture that on a sponsored product ad, just because it's literally a product listing. Your content is going to be big to, speak to that on your actual PDP, but I would say, again, measure your CPCs, try to be as strategic as possible on those keywords. If people are looking for high quality skincare products, make sure that's in your targeting strategy with your different keyword sets, and try to focus on really the core of what your products are and just continue to build from there.
Guys, we're coming up on time, so I'll take a few more questions, just maybe 2 or 3 more, and then we'll close out. We have, do you use any software for automations, such as Atomic? If yes, what are the basic rules and criteria you suggest for creating any sort of automatic updates?
So I personally use PackView, and the automation tools within that are, again, fantastic. There's a bunch of different ways you can go about, I think, automation in general, but I would say make sure that your goal is very, very clear. It's just kind of blanketed statements for automation in general. Make sure your goals are very, very clear, and always have that safeguard of, if you're going to increase bids to a certain point, make sure that there's a cap on it. The last thing you want is to have, check your ads console and all of a sudden your bids are $40, $50 because that automation continued to increase based on the threshold you set. So make sure there's some safeguards in place. But for Atomic, I can't speak to Atomic in particular. But for PackView overall, there's a whole litany of automations that I use for profitability, for weeks of cover, for impression gaining, for new to brand driving. So I think that it's an endless kind of hole of test and learn potential, and all kinds of good stuff. So I would say test for automations for sure.
Yeah, and when you're inside of Helium 10, it's the same exact thing when you're setting up those rules. I know we've talked quite a bit about goal setting here today, and that definitely is true even inside of Atomic. When you're doing your rules, it's going to really depend on what niche you're inside of and what your risk tolerance is, how much budget you have, what you're bidding on your keywords, and then you can go in and decide from there. I mean, I know that as a standard, I've gone in and done 20 clicks, no sales, you're negative matching that keyword. So really just depends, but Atomic certainly has ways that you can put in those rules and automation so you're not spending so much time on trying to audit your entire campaigns. We have with the higher fees and costs of FBA products, how do you recommend these are handled in PPC?
Yeah, this is a tough one. It is really difficult to kind of advertise your way around the fees and costs. I think, you know, within your own business, evaluate where your profitable products are, and I would say try to bucket them in terms of priority. Um, but yeah, it's really difficult to advertise your way around some of those fees. So I don't know if I have a great answer to handle it from PPC specifically, but I would say just stick with your highest profitable ASINs and continue to push there.
Matt's question is, should I drive my Google traffic to my listing using the attribution links or directly to my shop? Both offer analytics.
I don't have a ton of experience with driving Google traffic, so I'm not sure how to directly answer that. I think if your shop, is offering your fuller range of products and conversion rate's good on the shop, I would say try that and go back to my test and learn mentality. Try both, see which one works better. Run each, for a set amount of time, maybe 3 weeks, and go back and analyze the results after the fact.
Now, this is a fun one, a more broad one. Ricardo asks, how much money do you estimate based on your experience that a typical product spends on PPC in an entire year?
I've had products spend $50 a year and 7 million a year. So I mean, it's totally variable in terms of what you're looking for. But I think the way that I would answer this is you can set kind of some parameters around the campaigns you're launching to drive that spend behind particular products for PPC. And what I mean by that is you can continue to expand your keyword lists for category campaigns. You can expand your competitor targeting um, for your keyword campaigns, and you can kind of continue up that to really an uncapped potential. There's so much you can do with sponsored brands now and sponsored brand videos that um, you can really, if you had an uncapped budget, I mean, you could have a ton of fun. It would be awesome. You could create a really, really detailed strategy, very custom to what you're looking to achieve. So I don't know if I have a good estimate for you. I'm sorry.
No, I thought that would be a fun one to throw up. I'll close out with this one that's coming up here because there's two that go hand in hand. This one says best strategy for a new product launch, highly targeted exact match only or exact brought in phrase if budget allows, and that's from Jordan Lee. And then there was a secondary that said is product targeting more preferable during product launch. So both have to do with product launches. I figured if we're talking about strategy, you could probably hit both.
Yeah. I think new product launch, I would say, depending on your budget, again, evaluate your CPCs kind of as you get going, but the high search volume terms are going to be where the eyeballs are going. So I think that's a good place to start. And I say if your budget may not allow for that, just keep working your way down that list of search volume. See, kind of go to that mid tier to the longer tail and kind of work your way in that way. I think for me, again, I'm going to default to exact match. I think that way you have the ability to turn on and off those particular keywords. You can be very prescriptive with where your dollars are going when you're especially launching a product that is critical. So I would say start with exact match, try to build some relevancy on those terms, leverage your auto campaigns, and pick out the terms from the search term report that are in alignment with your overall strategy. So from there, I think phrase and broad match are good tests. I would say keep budgets low on any broad match campaign, but I would default more towards the phrase following an exact match to kind of establish yourself on at least a couple of keywords, whether they're mid to longer tail or the really high search volume ones. I think that's going to be where you should start.
And then for the product targeting, is there a time frame that you recommend?
I think I might have broke out a little bit. You said, is there a time frame for product targeting?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I think product targeting, if you have the room for it in your budget, it's again in that bucket of nice to have. I think it's really beneficial to be able to roll those out. I think it can help build out a strategy, and you can get really prescriptive with how you are using those. So for some of the product attribute targeting I've run previously, I've had a bucket of branded defense where I'm targeting my own products. So that way, if someone were to be on my PDP, they only see my products, which again is very defensive minded, but kind of covers your bases in terms of any potential competitors sneaking in. You can go more category based in general terms, then you can go very specific to just conquesting, and you can have those three buckets as product targeting to explore with. And I think the defensive one is pretty safe, but if you're launching a new product, I would expand more into the competitor and the category stuff, because that's going to be where the eyeballs are going to be with a new product.
And guys, when you don't have social proof, you don't have the reviews necessarily, sometimes you can compete on the price. So finding those competitor products where you are able to capture the sales because you're able to offer something better, then that can be really advantageous from a product targeting standpoint as well. So with that, we've had a really great list of questions here today, and I apologize if I didn't get to some of the newer ones. In which case, we have a Facebook group. So make sure that you guys go to our Facebook group, you go to Helium 10 members, and post up any of those questions that you really have, because we are active in there and we do answer those questions. And if not, somebody else definitely can. So make sure you guys are tapped into our communities. And thank you so much, Matt, for being here. We appreciate you coming on and sharing your time and knowledge.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, and hopefully got to the bulk of the questions for everybody. Yeah, it was a treat to be here. I appreciate it.
Likewise, likewise. All right, with that, we are done. We will see you guys next time. Take care.